I'll call the August 23rd, 2022 meeting of the Escondido Planning Commission to order. Commissioner Barber will
Here.
lead us.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were doing roll call.
Commissioner Barber will lead us in the flag salute.
Or that. Okay, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
And may we have the roll call?
Commissioner Barber,
Here.
Commissioner Maccaro, Vice Chair Paul,
Present.
Commissioner Spear, Commissioner Weiler,
Here.
and Chair Barbe and Commissioner Doan are both absent.
Our first item is the minutes, July 26th, 2022. Does anyone have any comments? Do I have a motion?
Move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Call for the vote.
Commissioner Barber,
Yes.
Commissioner Maccaro, Vice Chair Paul,
Yes, approve.
Commissioner Spear,
Abstain.
and Commissioner Weiler.
Yes.
The vote is 3 to approve with 2 abstained.
Written communications. Do we have any written communications?
Good evening, Vice Chair Paul. There was one piece of written communication that was provided to the members of the commission earlier today via email, and the first approximately 11 or so pages of it were provided on the dais as well this afternoon or this evening. The remaining pages were pieces of appendices and exhibits attachments that were extremely lengthy and a lot of data tables. Those are available to view on your through the email that was forwarded to you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any oral communications?
We do have one request to speak for item H1.
Right. Do we have any oral communications for anything not on the agenda? Okay, we have no public hearings, so we'll move to current business. The first item, PHG 20-0030, the 2021 through 2029 draft housing element update. And I was expecting Planner Marones.
Nope, I gave her the night off. So Veronica and I were talking on this, and I'm very well up to speed on where we're at with this. So again, my name's Adam Feinstone, City Planner. We had received a letter from the State Department of Housing and Community Development on August 2nd of this year, outlining additional modifications that they had identified that will need to be made prior to our housing element being certified, assuming that it would at some point between now and then be approved and adopted through this through City Council upon recommendation of Planning Commission. So at this point, we had intended, absent this letter from HCD, we had intended to bring the draft housing element to this body either this month, next month, for consideration and recommendation to City Council. However, at this point, it would be fruitless to do that because we would wind up with a document that, if approved by Council, would still not be certifiable by HCD. So rather than that, we have taken our time to look at the comments provided by HCD, and Ms. Morones and myself are working through that, and I'm going to be providing some revisions to the document that we will then post for a 14-day public review prior to sending that further draft back to HCD for their review once more. Hopefully that'll be the last cycle, and we'll be able to get this thing in front of you guys for formal consideration end of this year, beginning of next. Just for a quick summary, the two items that that HCD had identified in their letter were a need to put additional teeth into the AFFH aspects of the housing element. That's the affirmatively furthering fair housing actions. They were looking for more actionable programs and milestones with mitigate or with metrics, targets, new numbers, etc., that could be served by those measures. And they also identified some inconsistencies with regard to the examples and methodology for the sites inventory. So in the document, we identify certain items, or we have, I think, 3 metrics that are required. A property must meet 2 of those 3 to be included on the sites inventory. Meanwhile, a couple of the examples that we used in the appendices only addressed or only were making use of one of those. So while they did definitely identify projects that were good projects, appropriate, and provided housing, they didn't check the boxes that we were saying projects should be checking. So that's what they've asked for, is more consistency in that analysis. Aside from that, there's nothing further that staff needed to provide to the commission on this. We did, like I mentioned earlier, receive a letter that had been placed on the dais that is related to this item, and I believe there's a public speaker as well. But from staff side perspective, that's all we have for our staff report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Can we have the public comment now, please?
Yes, we have Mr. Francisco Pena.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Francisco Peña, and I'm a member of the Southwest Regional Council of Carpenters. I live in the local area and live, work, and recreate in the vicinity of this project. I'm here representing over 6,000 union carpenters, journeymen, skilled, trained, and apprentices, not just in the North County, but in all San Diego County. I believe that I will be impacted by the environmental impacts of this project. The city should require the project to be built utilizing local and skilled trained workforce. Local hire and skilled and trained workforce requirements reduce construction-related environmental impacts while benefiting the local economy. In a recent 2020 report titled "Putting California on the High Road, a Job and Climate Action Plan for 2030, the California Workforce Development Board concluded that investments in growing, diversifying, and upskilled California workforce can positively affect returns and climate mitigation efforts. Moreover, just this year, the South Coast Air Quality Management District found that the use of local state certified apprenticeship programs or a skilled and trained workforce with the local hire component can result in air pollutant restrictions. Other cities have not hesitated in applying skilled and trained workforce requirements such for private development projects for their cities. Recently, the city of Hayward in Northern California adopted a skilled and trained workforce requirement into the general plans and municipal codes. Local and skilled trained workforce requirements can boost economic development and mitigate transportation and greenhouse gas impacts by minimizing vehicle miles traveled. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from the commission? All right. I don't believe we're supposed to take any action on this. All right. So we'll move to the next item. Item 2, PL 22-0357, Planning Commission bylaws. Planner Feinstone.
Good evening again, Chair Paul, Vice Chair Paul, and members of the commission. So we have been discussing over the last few months the Planning Commission bylaws and an update to them. What we have now, the current version was adopted in October of 2018. Over the last few months and maybe last couple years, actually, staff in the Planning Division, City Attorney's Office has identified a number of discrepancies, errors, issues that needed to be addressed. So we've been looking at that, and we did bring a few things forward to the commission on July 26th, the last meeting here, to discuss and get some input and information on. You'll notice in the revised bylaws, which are included as an exhibit to the resolution, and that's the main point of consideration tonight, you'll notice that they are a significant overhaul, reformatting, and additional information compared to the prior version that was in effect. The intent was really to bring in the appropriate information from the City Council's rules of procedure, which were kind of used as a guide in drafting these. And I did provide those to you all, I believe, by email subsequent to our last meeting here. We also looked at fixing the issues that were identified and determined to be potentially erroneous through staff and the City Attorney's Office and Planning. We discussed and put in some information regarding the issues we addressed at last month's meeting with regard to the role of the Secretary, public testimony at meetings, public correspondence and communications with the Commission, and how the agendas were created and distributed. Additional detail was put into many of these items in many of these areas for clarity, and there was reorganization so that it kind of flowed better as well. So what you'll see at this point is a newly formatted set of bylaws that have that really kind of incorporate the City Council's rules of procedure and put the information that had been in the prior Planning Commission bylaws, or the current, I guess, existing Planning Commission bylaws, into this format. So it's broken into 5 sections, and it's detailed in the staff report and obviously in the document itself. An introduction. There's a section on meetings and how those operate, order of topics, etc. Section on the roles and responsibilities of staff, of the commissioners, of the chair, etc. A section regarding correspondence and communication. This addresses correspondence and communication between staff and the commission, between the public and the commission, and between commissioners. And then the final section with regard to amendments to the bylaws. There are 2 areas or 2 specific points I wanted to just note as far as revisions or basically grammatical errors and reference corrections that I wanted to make note of. I did send the page number, the version of the staff report, or of the bylaws, I should say, with those page numbers on it. So hopefully everyone has that. The 2 items are on the very top of page 6. Continuing from the bottom of page 5, it says the city planner shall coordinate with an individual commissioner. It reads to call a meeting the order, and it should be to call the meeting to order. So that's the very top of page 6. Individual commissioner to call the meeting to order is how that should read. And then at the very bottom of that same page, where the reference is to section B6, it should actually be to section B7. That's the entirety of the staff report for this item. If the commission has any questions, by all means, please ask, and we're open to open this up for discussion. There's page numbers here for reference. So back to you.
Thank you. So we have no public comments, correct? All right. Can we start then with Commissioner Barber? Would you like to start?
Okay, I have a couple questions. If a planning commissioner wants to discuss an item on a future agenda, for example, if Commissioner Paul wants to put on-site parking on a future agenda for discussion, I'm not understanding why it would need a majority vote from his fellow planning commissioners to place it on the agenda.
So the idea is to ensure that there's interest in discussing the topic amongst more than just a small minority of the commission. If the commission feels that that's something that they'd like to have addressed in a different manner, that's their purview. Staff's recommendation would be at minimum to make sure that there are at least the individual commissioner who would be requesting that, and at least one other commissioner who's interested in having that discussion.
Just to be clear, if I could jump in, it is up to the commission to set your own procedures and policies. So that's what staff is recommending, and it's up to you to decide.
Thank you. I wanted to make sure there wasn't some state laws that's applying to this.
No.
Okay, after a discussion item is conducted amongst the planning commission, It states in the bylaws that no action shall be taken by the commission, and city staff will not take further action on such items unless instructed to do so by the city council or the city manager. Could we not at least have the latitude to make a recommendation to the city council to consider this item and to take action or direct staff?
So the city council is made aware of any of the planning commission meeting minutes, and these items would be in there for discussion, or these discussion items. Staff is limited in resources, and unless directed by by a council or city manager, we don't have those resources available to be processing further amendments, further project load, et cetera, policy work, et cetera, from at the recommendation of the planning commission. City council is who directs policy, so they would be providing us with direction to make any changes or to look at any changes, which would then be brought back before this body for comment and recommendation to the council. But if the goal and if the idea and desire is to have staff report out to the city council what that discussion was, we can accommodate, find a way to do that.
Thank you. When the public wishes to address an item, well, more specifically, the applicant or an organization or individuals that are protesting or against the item, they're limited in the proposed bylaws to 15 minutes unless they contact staff prior and staff advises the chair on whether or not to allow any extension time beyond that. Why couldn't the chair at her own discretion during the presentation, if there's a sense that there's still information that's needed to be addressed, could not allow the applicant or the other party to continue to speak beyond that 15 minutes without having the first request prior to the start of the hearing?
There's nothing in state law or anywhere that would preclude that from being something that we could change in these draft bylaws.
Thank you. Let's see. I wanted to just make sure I'm understanding commissioners should not contact the media or speak on behalf of the advisory body unless authorized to do so. Is that strictly referring to whether or not we initiate contact? If after a hearing, if, for example, someone from the media contacted Commissioner Weiler and wanted him to expand upon his reasoning behind his vote, is he denied the opportunity to address that?
No, an individual commissioner can speak on what their decision and their vote on a particular topic was. They would be speaking in that position that they, as themselves as a commissioner, not on behalf of the city.
All right, I wanted to clarify that. Then finally, I want to be able to have access, see any written communication submitted from the public before I reach a decision. However, I don't feel that it's necessary that if an email or letter is received by staff prior to the start of, for example, on the day of the hearing, that the city clerk should then be expected to read that communication into the record when we have it before us to read. It seems to me that's an unnecessary exercise.
So the reason for that, I think, is something that I believe it might have been Commissioner Weiler had brought up at the previous meeting, that we show up and the commissioners have correspondence on the dais and don't have time to review it prior to making any type of decision on a project. So it's really correspondence that's not being considered, right? It's there in front of you, but it's not something that is being formally. You don't have time to digest it, right? So that's the purpose for the minutes clerk to read those into the record.
Okay, we'll discuss that. Or discuss it now.
I guess if and I don't know, via the chair, because Commissioner Barber brought up some really good points, do we want to just let each commissioner finish with all of their points and then circle back around on each one of them, or hit them as we go through the points? Only because there's some things that the commissioner brought up that were really pertinent.
Yeah, and I think we might all have a lot of the same points. So I'm gonna keep a running list, and I figure we'll let everybody go through once first, and then we'll go back to them. All right?
Thank you, Adam. That completes my questions.
All right, great. Commissioner Spear.
Thank you. Let's see. The commission has received multiple complaints from the public in the past regarding the frequent cancellation of planning commission meetings. In practice, the commission has also learned of commission meeting cancellations a few days before the scheduled meeting, had no voice in the decision to cancel the meetings. The Planning Commission, I believe, is the body that should authorize the cancellation of Planning Commission meetings. And while posting of a meeting cancellation is required to be noticed 72 hours prior to the scheduled meeting, cancellation recommendations might be better served having been noticed to the Commission at least as early as possible, but with no less than enough time for the Commission itself to decide on whether to cancel and then post prior to the 72-hour scheduled meeting. So my thought is I don't see anything in these bylaws that addresses formally the procedure for cancellation of the meeting. In looking towards precedent of other planning commissions, I did find other precedents. For example, the San Francisco Planning Commission has in Section 4 some verbiage regarding the cancellation of their meetings. The verbiage does, I'll just read you a little excerpt of what it says. It says the commission or the president may cancel the regular meeting or fix another time therefor. Notice of cancellation or change. So in other words, they have verbiage within their bylaws that suggests that it is it is by recommendation of staff whether or not to cancel a meeting. It is ultimately the planning commission that decides on whether to cancel that meeting or not. So that's an item I wanted to consider within the bylaws as well. The other, I think, was already addressed, so that's it.
Commissioner Maccaro.
None at this time.
Nothing.
It's been addressed. It's good.
Okay. And Mr. Weiler.
Pursuant to the comments that were made by Commissioner Barber and the information that's coming to Planning Commission, because and tonight's a good example. This that was emailed, I think it was today, right? Well, if it happened to be that I'm not in my office all day long and I'm out wherever, I would not have the opportunity to read this, even though it was emailed to us, I don't know, sometime this morning. And it was a big, long, detailed letter with supporting, documentation. So my concern is that it almost becomes moot if we don't have that opportunity to review these sort of documents because they're brought to us at the final moment. And there may be legal reasons why the public can provide input as such this detailed letter all the way up until just prior to the Planning Commission hearing. And that's my first question. Are there legal allowances, I guess, that we have to allow the public to submit a detailed document that we have no time to review without setting some sort of limit? And I guess what I'm trying to get at is maybe we need to say, look, if you're going to submit something that is more than 3 minutes worth of reading by the clerk, that's got to come to us 24, 48, 72 hours ahead of time. And I don't know if we have the ability to put that sort of requirement within our bylaws.
Okay. Well, yeah, the answer is it might sort of depend on what the commission is considering. So there are legal requirements for periods of notice that we'll have to comply with. There is an ability to set certain reasonable limits, but I can certainly look into that and get a definitive answer if the commission would like it.
And so, thank you, I appreciate that. So I do understand if certain things come before us and it's short, and the minutes clerk can read them within the 3 minutes, all right, it's not much different, except for there might not be the emotion that somebody from the public would give, but at least the information is provided to us in a way that we get to consider it, kind of like public testimony. But anything beyond 3 minutes, because I watch city council, 3 minutes hit, that's it. It's done. There's no conclusion, or if that particular person happened to provide written correspondence that was beyond the 3 minutes. So I understand that. That's okay. But something like this, gosh. Fortunately enough, I was able to read it and kind of go through some things, so I had an understanding where they were coming from. But I don't know what the public expects if they're rolling up with a detailed letter that we're actually going to have time to consider this.
I only was able to read it because I came in here a half hour early to sit and review it.
Yeah. And I mean, and sometimes we have the ability to read something, and sometimes we don't. I know I've got meetings sometimes that are outside the county. I'm not reading anything until I get here 5 minutes before the meeting, because my meetings run late when I'm out in Imperial. Anyway, it's just a thought. And maybe, I don't know what the resolution is. There's a legal standpoint I get that we need to find out, but I guess if the public is really paying attention and looking at our bylaws, which I suspect that they don't, at least they might understand, look, you're going to present something that's pretty detailed. You're not going to get the consideration that I think it might deserve. I don't know, it's an education process, I guess, and there may not be any real answer. So that was my first comment. My other one was, in the revised bylaws, I didn't see the 3-minute time limit for the public. And that's in attachment 4, right? And I may have just missed it. I saw the 15-minute limit, but not the 3-minute limit. Now, I saw it at the very beginning in our current bylaws under the duties of the chair, but I didn't see it in the revised one.
So I think, and I'm looking for it right now, but I believe that it's because the number 3 is spelled out and the number 15 is a 1 and a 5. That's probably why it was missed.
But it is there? Okay.
Yeah, so it's on page 8, 6B. The very last line has 3 minutes written there, THREE.
All right. Good enough for me. Thank you. That was really it.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I have a couple, Adam. So starting with the staff report, on page 4, kind of in the middle of the page, there's a comment. Additionally, while the Planning Commission does not typically have the ability to ask questions of public speakers, staff believes it is appropriate to allow that practice when the speaker is the applicant. Why wouldn't the Planning Commission typically have the ability to question a public speaker?
That's historically been the way that a planning commission and a city council item in public testimony. It's public comments that are being provided to the commission. It's not a question answer session. It's really an applicant or an individual addressing the commission or the council. It's not a question. It's not a, hey, I'm here to answer your questions, etc. It could be if necessary.
Well, right. I mean, I recognize that for like the comments at the beginning of the meeting that are not on a topic. But if we have somebody that talks about a project, I think we do sometimes ask them questions, right?
It's not the norm, I guess, is where I would be, what I
Okay.
would be saying.
Okay, but there's not going to be something in the bylaws about that. This comment is just in the staff report, right? Okay. All right.
But I want to, does that deny us the opportunity to ask them questions?
If there's nothing in the bylaws that preclude that, then unless there's something in statute that I'm not aware of, then
Right. I didn't see it in the bylaws. I just saw it in the staff report. Okay.
And there's no legal reason why you can't. You're free to ask questions if you'd like.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Now to the actual document. You got the B7. So, Commissioner Barber mentioned this about putting something on the agenda, but there's item number 7 on that. No item shall be placed on the agenda by the Planning Commission that relates to a specific development project that is under review by city staff, nor to any policy issue identified in the Planning Commission work plan. And then the last part, here's the kicker, or other topic anticipated to be brought forward to the commission in the coming 12 months. To me, that seems like anything we might want to talk about, we can't.
that's not the intent of that at all. I can't give you a specific example.
So if we use the covered parking example, that might come up in a project within the next 12 months.
So it's not talking, the intent isn't to say a project may have this policy issue to it, so you can't talk about the policy issue.
Okay.
It's to say that we intend to bring forward a policy a policy item on whatever that is, so we don't want to entertain a commission discussion on that
Oh, okay.
outside of those normal means.
Okay, so if we wanted to talk about covered parking, you might say, oh, we're putting that on the agenda for November. You wait till November, right? Okay, all right. Then on the next page, there's I. A spokesperson representing a group of individuals shall be allotted a maximum of 3 minutes per member of the group in attendance. And then it says each member of the group shall fill out a speaker slip identifying the name of the individual. How about if we remove that first sentence?
What page are you on, if you don't mind?
I don't have the copy with the page numbers.
9.
Thank you. Page
What was it?
9. So 9I, a spokesperson. You've already mentioned above it about the spokesperson getting 15 minutes. This goes into more detail. It says a spokesperson representing a group of individuals shall be allotted a maximum of 3 minutes per member of the group in attendance. And I think that just was kind of redundant, and I think maybe you should just leave the second part there. Each member of the group shall fill out a speaker slip identifying the name of the individual who will speak on behalf of that group.
The intent there was so that someone isn't representing a group of themselves and 2 other people,
Right.
and getting the amount of speaking time as would be
Right.
typically allowed for 5 individuals.
Right, and
It's-
I would think that if we have them fill out a speaker slip and there's only 2 speaker slips, we'll know they shouldn't get their 15 minutes.
Up to you guys.
Okay. And then the next paragraph, D, only a project proponent or applicant shall be permitted to provide a multimedia presentation. So I guess I'm going to have to say, what's the definition of a multimedia presentation, and why would we restrict someone from doing that?
Basically a PowerPoint, and the reason that that we would look at it being the applicant or an appellant or proponent of a project is that it is difficult for staff to know what the number of people that might be represented by an individual or a group. So if someone says, oh, yeah, I'm bringing 6 people with me, here's my 15-minute PowerPoint, and they show up on their own, that's contrary to the design of the ability to have that additional time.
Oh, right, but what if they were entitled to their 15 minutes and they had a PowerPoint?
We need to have it 24 hours in advance. That's what our information systems department says, and I mean, if you wanted to allow that, these are your bylaws, right? So if it's something that you want to amend and change before these get adopted, it's up to you guys.
Okay. And then the next page, the infamous B7. A says, action by the planning commission shall be taken in the same manner as described in city council actions, in the manner as described for city council actions in city council resolution 2021-156. And I guess I'm concerned about the reference to that, because this is like a 20 some odd page document, and not very much of this document applies to commission action on agenda matters. I mean, there's a lot more in here, and I'm not sure what's part of this document is related to action on agenda matters.
So it is speaking to, and I can't give you a specific reference in the council resolution, but it's speaking to actions or how the council takes action on manners. It would be the same way that the planning commission would be entitled to do so.
So there is a section on page 8, section it's labeled 13, processing of motions, and that seems like the most relevant.
If that's the way that if you'd like to be more specific with it, that's, we can put that reference in there.
So I was wondering if we could just put not even put the reference, but actually
Pull this information in.
put this information there instead, since it's really a much smaller part. Because then further down the bottom of the page, E, it has the same kind of reference. Precedence of motions shall be in the same manner as described in the meeting. And
So that would be number 14 then on the city council resolution, right?
And so the precedence of motions, I think, is on the next page. It starts on the bottom. It's on the same page. 14, precedence of motions. Mm-hmm. And so if we could maybe just put, so it would add less than a page to ours to actually put the reference instead of making people try to look for it. Because we've already made them look for B7. I guess I was going to say we should maybe take that out too. It's the part that says see section B7. That's kind of like just keep reading and you'll get to it. The reference that we already corrected from B6 to B7. And then I had a question on that precedence of motion. Item number 4 is a call for the previous question. And does Escondido use a simple majority for the previous question or a 2/3 majority?
I think you've stumped both myself and the attorney and this senior deputy city attorney with that question.
I don't know off the top of my head. Apologize.
Okay, but could we put that in there too? Whatever it is, if it's 50 plus 1 or 2/3. All right, and last. Oh, that's it. So you want to start with the stuff we have in common? The first was majority to add something to the agenda.
I would still like to see that removed from the bylaws. My memory goes back to an example, a city council example. I can remember back in 1988, City Councilman Chris Murphy. Yes, well, I chuckle more than you do. Made a proposal that he directed staff to assist him in drafting the proposed ordinance. The city attorney worked with him. He came to the hearing, presented his proposal. It didn't get a second. It died. He had no support. It was just Chris Murphy that wanted to discuss the item and present the idea. to see if he put it up the flagpole, if anyone would salute. I don't think it would have been fair to have barred Councilman Murphy from having had that opportunity to present his idea for what he thought would be a good planning decision. And I think the same thing should apply to this planning commission, that I think any one of us should be able to, without having to seek the support of 2 or 3 of his fellow commissioners, to place the item on a future agenda.
Agreed.
Right, anyone else?
Are we making a distinction between staff, devotion of staff versus bringing up the item? Because I see that as potentially 2 different things. One would be directing staff to devote resources to it prior to having a majority chime in, and the other would be simply to bring it up and discuss it.
I would support the latter. For example, I mean, I'm going to use your as an example, that he would like to discuss covered parking on site. I think he should be able to make a request for this to come back an agenda item without including staff support. And then based on that discussion, could determine whether or not there was now planning commission interest in looking at this deeper with staff assistance. Does that make sense?
It does. To me, it does. You're saying, hey, I can bring it up and we can talk about it. If it flies, then we can agree to commit staff or request staff resource.
Yeah, that's how I feel.
We've already heard that we're not getting staff resources, period, whether it's a majority or not.
Well, I think in the example that he mentioned, he was talking about getting staff resources
Well, I did
ahead
bring
of time.
That's how Chris was able to go. I'm sorry, I call him Chris. I know Chris personally. We debate constantly on Facebook on political issues. But I was giving an example that Chris was given that much latitude to go that deep into bringing a proposal to his colleagues on the city council. I think we should at least have the latitude to at least bring a discussion, an idea to the council for analysis amongst ourselves and debate.
Can I just clarify that about the staff time? So yeah, I think the difference is you're talking about something at city council, which is very different because per the municipal code, the city council is the body that instructs the staff on what to do. So planning commission is very limited on what it can request staff do. So that's the difference.
So if I,
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, if I may, it sounds like what we're trying to determine is, can an individual planning commissioner request to have something be put on the agenda? Regardless, let's forget about the staff assistance or not. That's not the topic du jour right now. It's can one commissioner put something on the agenda? Is that an accurate assessment?
Yes.
So I guess kind of where we're leaning is it seems like, and I would like to see that without having a vote of the majority, if somebody wants to bring something up as just to talk about, as long as we're not having staff devote any resources towards that discussion, I would like for us the ability as a commission to talk about it here on the dais and the public forum. I think that's a good thing. If there was going to be a vote to devote staff resources, it almost seems like that vote has to be pushed up to city council so that they can direct staff to devote resources towards whatever that happens to be. So it seems to me like that would be the only vote, which would be, look, we would like city council to allow staff to go down this certain path. But I would certainly favor us having a discussion regardless of what it is, just amongst us without having staff time set aside for it.
Right. So on one side we need a majority, on the other side we only need one. Is that what I'm hearing? You only need one person to bring it up, and it's going on the agenda.
That's what I'm advocating.
Yeah, it's a no vote. It's just, yeah, you want to talk about covered parking, and we talk about it. But staff isn't going to prepare a staff report and do research and gather all the documentation about carports. We just discuss it. If after that discussion, then we determine, hey, it's worthwhile to dig a little deeper into this, and we're going to need staff help, we almost have to vote to ask permission from the council to have them decide, yes, it's worthy of staff resources.
But some organizations some organizations will not allow just one member to put something on the agenda because they have a member who puts things on the agenda that don't belong there. So that's part of, I think, why they're saying a majority, that it has to be something that the group wants to, as a group wants to talk about it. I mean, if I said, let's talk about chocolate chip cookies, why would we want to talk about chocolate?
Right, and it seems like we have the attorney here to be able to say, yes, that is within your purview. Talking about chocolate chip cookies is not, therefore, yeah, we can't put it on the agenda.
I think we've also mentioned a separate step. We talked about one person. We've talked about a majority. We've also talked about two members, right? That would be somewhere in between that would provide some level of filtering. So that might be a middle road option as well. Is that the wording that is currently proposed, Adam? The two members, or is it a majority?
Currently, as it's identified, it's a majority. I think I mentioned in my comments earlier this evening that the potential of having two members, so that there's at least one other individual who wants to have that discussion.
Right.
Well, that could get squashed pretty quickly if, I mean, I guess it gives one person the ability to get up, say their piece, and if the rest of us don't agree with it, hey, there's no motion made, there's nothing else, we heard what you had to say, and there's no discussion. I don't know, maybe two people is okay? I don't know.
Just to be
I'm
clear.
kind of thinking out loud here.
I just want to clarify, when we're talking about somebody putting something on the agenda, there can't be discussion about that topic because it hasn't been on the agenda. So it's a little bit of a catch-22. So whenever somebody is raising the issue, making a motion, or requesting something be on the agenda, it just has to be a very simple request that this item be on the agenda, not a discussion about that.
So would it occur at that point where you would make a recommendation or a decision that this is worthy or not worthy of planning commission discussion?
Yeah, I don't anticipate that would be necessary every time. Hopefully, it would be pretty obviously within the purview of the commission. But if it were something out of left field, yes, that would be at the
Right.
point. In the point in time somebody wants to talk about chocolate chip cookies, that's when I would say that's not going to fly.
Right. I think a reasonable compromise is that somebody brings it up and someone seconds it, and that's how it ends up on the agenda.
Let me ask, do we need to compromise? I mean, is there a consensus for only one planning commissioner being needed to put it on a future agenda? I'm not hearing much objection to it.
Yeah, I think that's part of the discussion now.
Right. Well, let's do a straw poll. Who favors one?
I favor one.
I favor 1 and 2.
You're not helping.
I'm fine with one.
I think I'm good with two.
I'm good with two as well.
So,
It's two.
okay.
The mechanism we haven't discussed of two, and that mechanism, I know there was concern brought up about the fact that we can't discuss the item ahead of time. I'm contemplating the idea that the mechanism be one person propose it to the person that is preparing the agenda. That person that's preparing the agenda then send out a poll to say, does anyone second this? And that way there's no discussion amongst the commissioners. It's simply he got another response from one commissioner that seconded it, we can put it on the agenda.
Yeah, except that the way this is written, that this actually comes up at a meeting. At a meeting, a commissioner can propose something for the agenda.
that would be the forum for proposing it, not
Right.
ahead of time.
Right, there's nothing in here about ahead of time at all. They're saying the only way to do it is at a meeting, which I kind of have heartburn over that when we cancel, and then you have to wait all that long to then ask, but
Another topic.
that's the way it's written, is it's only proposed at a meeting.
And that's modeled after how council's actions are done, so.
Okay, I'm coming full circle. What's council's process?
So council has the authority and the ability to have one member of council put an item or to request an item for a future agenda. It is part of the city council meeting. Towards the end of the meeting, they ask for kind of the same thing I've outlined here, future agenda items.
So they each have the opportunity to only have one person required to put an agenda item on. That's what you just said?
Correct.
Okay. So we'd be acting a little different, a little more cautiously than how they're acting by having two.
Yeah. I'll say that there are other jurisdictions though that do require two or even a majority. So.
Okay.
All right, so I think we're going with two guys, right? Okay. And then there was a comment. Okay.
I'm sorry, associated with this, I would still like to see the planning commission be able to, after the discussion, perhaps be able to vote to request staff to make a presentation to the city council at a city council meeting, describing our discussion and what we would like to see the council pursue.
Can I ask what you mean by presentation? Because that you're not talking about devoting time.
I'm talking about them. It could be the city staff, the city manager report saying at the planning commission hearing such and such a date, they discussed this item and made the following recommendation.
We'll have to think about how that can be done. That actually, until you said that, I was unsure of what we would be able to do, but that might be an option and be something I'll have to talk with the city manager's office on.
Okay, thank you.
Right, and so does that belong in the bylaws though, or that's just action that's taken?
They're your bylaws, right? So let me,
right. Right, I mean, I think we're talking about theoretical action as the result of a conversation, and that could be any kind of action, right? We could ask the city council to put it to a vote of the public. Right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay, I was going to go to the next one. You had about the chair adding more time. I'm not sure if you want that in the bylaws, or that was just a question that you got.
No, I wanted clarification because I think if a presentation is being made either by an organized group opposing the application or the applicant, and I certainly would think that 15 minutes would be sufficient time for anyone to make their case. But just in case, as the time runs out, they discover there is a critical point that they haven't been able to make, but they didn't approach city staff in advance prior to the hearing, requesting that additional time, I think that they should be able to ask the chair if they could get a little additional time to make that point.
Oh, I misunderstood you. I thought you meant the commission wanted them to have more time. You're saying the applicant wants more time but didn't ask for it?
Well, in the bylaws, the applicant can only get beyond 15 minutes. Correct me if I'm misunderstanding this, Adam. Can only get additional 15 minutes if they approach staff first to make the request, and then the staff meets with the chair to see if they can coordinate that.
Yeah. So what the draft bylaws say is that you get 15 minutes unless additional time is requested by the proponent, appellant, or group spokesperson ahead of time. And in such instance, staff will communicate with the chair, will have discretion as to whether to grant that extra time. And if they do grant that extra time, that'll be noted prior to the discussion. I think the idea is that it allows for disclosure to the public at the time that the applicant or appellant or whoever it might be begins their presentation that, hey, they've been granted ability to go longer. Now, again, it can be the discretion of the chair as to whether to allow that to continue to go longer. I don't know that there's anything legally binding or any statute that would preclude that. I'm not sure that we have it.
Okay, so I guess then my question was, do those bylaws restrict the chair from having that discretion? And I think you just explained that, no, it doesn't.
Right, that was my thought too. If the chair wants to give the person more
Yeah.
time, they can.
So
Okay.
I guess I should restate, the bylaws as they read right now would preclude that, but there's nothing to preclude you guys from changing that right now.
Well, then I would like to change that right now.
Yeah, I would too. I think the chair should be able to give people more time. If the chair feels like I want to hear something else, I don't know, then the chair should be able to do that.
But you at what timing? While or prior to their starting their discussion?
Yeah, so the applicant was only expecting 15 minutes. His 15 minutes are up, and you have a question about covered parking. Well, I think we're going to let him go over his 15 minutes to answer your questions.
Isn't that typically the case, though? 15 minutes is their presentation. If we have questions, that's not a part of their 15 minutes. Is that correct, Adam?
So again, typically question answer isn't something we often see, but yeah, I think that would be outside of the allotted time. That would be in addition to.
I wasn't addressing whether our questions to the applicant. I was referencing whether or not he's got his list of 12 items he wants to go over, and he only got to 10, but it was certain 11 and 12 were critical to make his case. And he asked the chair if he could have additional time to address those points.
Presumably, he would have practiced his presentation prior to the meeting. What's that?
I'm sorry, I'm agreeing with you. He would know that in
Ahead of
advance.
time. So I don't see I'm trying to find the need to put a second mechanism in when we provided for that ahead of time, as opposed to saying you can do it ahead of time and you have another option to do it on the spot because maybe you didn't prepare. Right? Is that what we're saying here? We're proposing to give him a second mechanism to extend the time?
Yes.
Okay. I'd say he probably needs to prepare himself.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of that.
Could I ask a question? The 15 minutes, is that consistent with what city council?
I don't believe that city council has an actual time stated. It's a time that I think, based on our discussion a couple weeks ago here, that's the amount of time that I think I heard was appropriate from the commission.
That's what I think. You know, and I know that our last meeting I talked about, hey, let's have a limit on the time frame and so on. But I think for the project applicant, we give them enough time that's necessary to get the point across. I don't, and it's the appropriate timing. And then I think at some point it would be the chair's job to ask the applicant to wrap it up. If they go through their whole list and then they go back to the beginning and start again, okay, you know, that's the control of the chair to say, hey, you're all the way back at the beginning again. We don't need to hear it twice. So I don't know. I'm kind of changing my mind on the time limit and just leave it unlimited. Or maybe we say within reason, we have 24 hours ahead of time, right? That's when the any presentation multimedia is supposed to come in. And we can kind of read it and sort of judge, okay, this is a 10-minute or an hour presentation. And, you know, I don't know. I'm kind of thinking that if we get closer to what city council does, it would be better than
Right, but
having an arbitrary shortening of the time.
But I think staff, when you talk with the applicant, you're going to ask them how much time do you need, right? And
Yeah, and I think it's quite rare where we'll have an applicant who would actually ask for and utilize 15 minutes or more. There have probably been maybe 3 projects in the 6+ years I've been here that might have done that. But by keeping a time limit, it does keep people to the point. There have been applicants who have come before the commission and, you know, just keep going down that tangent that is completely off point, off topic. So at least that would stop them off that tangent at 15 minutes or whatever that time that you guys establish is. But yeah, having something there I think is helpful. to start with.
And that's what we're protecting against, is the overrun. I think we're already providing a mechanism where they can take longer if they want to. They just have to tell us ahead of time, right?
Yeah,
And knowing that our-
that's what I'm seeing, is that if an applicant for a very large project has a need to go into further detail and they justify that need, by all means, I don't think there'd be any heartache on staff's end to do that, to allow them to do that.
Okay, we're as is.
Well, I'm not okay, but I'm going to wave the white flag.
Thank you.
So where did we end up?
Leave it as is.
I'm sorry?
Leave it as is. 15 minutes of 20, you can ask.
And then
in
the
advance, they
chair
can-
has the ability to let them go for a specified amount of time, however it is the chair feels.
The chair, if they ask 24 hours in advance, the chair can say.
All right,
yep.
fair enough.
Staff and chair says, yep. And I think if it's a big project, they're going to know in advance. I think so. Okay, read into the record. Do we need to change anything in the bylaws about reading into the record? No, okay. Canceling the meeting. You had some strong comments about canceling the meeting, but I think staff puts together the agenda, and if they don't have anything to do, they shouldn't have to ask us if they can cancel the meeting.
As the city of San Francisco put in their bylaws, they don't preclude staff from recommending that the meeting be canceled. If there is nothing to have a meeting about, we shouldn't have a meeting necessarily. But that should be a planning commission decision to whether to cancel the meeting or not. So in their bylaws, as it's written, I believe, they say, hey, staff says we don't need a meeting. The planning commission says, okay, let's cancel it. And the planning commission cancels it.
How do we do that? How
Right,
does the planning commission who's not having a meeting, how do they?
I'm not sure how they did it. I can just read what is in their bylaws.
That's okay. Let's see if there's a second person that agrees first before you. Does anybody else agree the planning commission should be involved in canceling the meetings? No. So, thank you anyway. Issues.
Through the chair, also, if I may, I did appreciate Commissioner Spears' comments regarding giving more heads up on a cancellation, and staff will take that into consideration. We'll do everything we can to give you more heads up when we know that's going to be the case. There will be occasions when we don't know until the weekend, the Wednesday, Thursday prior to the meeting, whether something's going to be coming or not. But if we are aware, 2 weeks out, we can let you guys know.
That'd be helpful. On the same point, as far as notice to the commission itself, it was two things. It was that knowing if we're going to cancel a meeting a little more ahead of time than 72 is great. Also, we get our basically our agenda, our packet comes a few days before. While that, I understand, is important because you have a number of details that have to go into that, and you kind of need up until the end to get that put together. Is it possible to have something that comes to us, at least a brief list of the topics that are being considered to have in that meeting without the details, so that if we want to do research on our own, say, we're going to discuss the housing element, well, that's fine. We can look up the housing element and study it on our own and have a little more time for our preparation if there's preparation items that require more than a couple days.
I'm not aware of a mechanism that's been used. I'm not going to say that there is or isn't a mechanism that we can use to at least say, hey, here's what's coming on the future agenda. And in fact, as I'm speaking about it, I'm thinking aloud, or I'm thinking in my mind how City Council has future agenda items. They've got a calendar at the end of their agenda that goes through a couple of the following week's items, I believe, if I'm remembering this correctly. So that might be an opportunity that we would have. It won't necessarily say, okay, here's what's coming next week.
Okay.
And there may be issues with regard to projects that are entitlement applications where we don't have that knowledge of it's going to be ready to come to you guys. It's not. There may be last minute issues. So it makes it a little difficult to do something. And again, I'm continuing to think as I speak. Makes it a little difficult to do something at the meeting prior. But let me speak with the attorney's office, find out what mechanism might be possible to get you, at least as much heads up as possible that, hey, this item's on the agenda. One thing that I can say is that when there's a public hearing item, those have public hearing notices that are mailed out. If you're not receiving those for some reason, I'll make sure that you are, so that you'll at least have that. For mailing, it's 15 days heads up, or if it's just something that's going in the newspaper as a public notification, then that's a 10-day advance. So usually we do a mailing on a Monday, 15 days ahead of a Tuesday meeting, or we publish on a Thursday, which winds up being 12 days ahead of the Tuesday meeting. So we can, if you're not getting those, just by all means let me know and we'll make sure you are, because those are items that are in front of you as the commission.
And you mentioned that the council then has a list of future items.
I believe they do. I'm not going to say with certainty.
Okay.
And I want to say, historically, there's an item on the agenda called Director's Report, and Adam does tell us the stuff that's coming up. I mean, that has been his practice to include it there. All right. And so then the last thing I think was I brought up about multimedia presentations. And I kind of think anybody should be able to use their 3 minutes. They should be able to put a PowerPoint up if they provide it, 24 hours in advance.
I've seen that done at past city council meetings, so if they can do it in 3 minutes, I find that appropriate.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that as long as they can get through it in 3 minutes. But, I've done plenty of PowerPoints, and boy, 3 minutes, poof, and it's gone.
Well, I'll admit the ones that I had witnessed took longer than 3 minutes.
Yeah, but if they can find a way to get it done within 3 minutes and provide that to staff within 24-hour notice, how much effort is it on staff's part to make sure it gets put in and teed up and all of that?
Sure. So our information systems team has to scan any outside media for virus. Beyond that, it's not too much more staff time to come in and set up PowerPoint on this machine versus doing our own PowerPoint that we're setting up here. But to, when it comes time that someone's called up for their public comments, all right, close this PowerPoint, open that PowerPoint, you ready? Okay, next slide, so it is a little bit cumbersome, but maybe if they've been given a 3 minute, 3 minutes to speak, though, it would take 4 minutes to do that presentation because of the amount of time to queue it up, et cetera, while we're sitting there waiting.
Well, the numbers of times that it would actually happen is probably relatively low. Most folks, I think, they want to get through their presentation, and I don't know how much you can show in 3 minutes. Maybe they can show the site that they're concerned about, so we have a visual. Personally, I don't want to preclude that.
Yes, I did it once at the city council meeting. It's been years ago, but I provided to staff, I think it was 72 hours in advance, and they put it up, and the audience
and maybe
loved it.
that's it. It's like, okay, the applicant has 24 hours, and everybody else, it's 72, 48, 72, pick your number.
Right, and I'd be open to leave that to whatever staff if 24 hours isn't enough.
I don't see
supportive
any
of
reason 24 hours for an applicant versus someone else in the public. It takes the same amount of time for IS and for staff to queue something up and screen it as it does for an applicant versus a individual.
Okay, so I have a couple of typos, a the on page 6, a B7 on page 6, a change in majority to 2, Add multimedia. And I'd like to say, remove the reference to 2021-156 and put the real verbiage in. And I think that's a motion.
I'll second the motion.
Any further discussion? Call for the vote.
Commissioner Barber?
Aye.
Commissioner Macaro?
Aye.
Vice Chair Paul?
Yes, approve.
Commissioner Spear?
Approved.
Commissioner Weiler?
Yes.
Vote is 5-0 to approve.
All right. Next item is future agenda items.
What do you got, Rick?
Can we have a discussion about covered parking?
Sure can.
Thank you. Oh, I need a second.
I don't know.
I need a second.
I got you.
J, Planning Commissioner comments. All right. K, Director's report.
So, giving you guys a little bit of a heads up because I am aware of 3 items now that we'll be having at the meeting in a couple weeks. We have received appeals on 2 plot plans that had been approved. Information will be sent out on those as public hearing notices next week, so you will be receiving that. And then the third item will be the discussion of covered parking.
All right. Okay, adjourned.